The doorbell camera recorded the entire scene. In the faint, early morning light, a man could be seen dragging a heavy shape wrapped in fabric across the pavement at 4 a.m., straining under the weight as he inched it toward his car. Hidden inside that bundle was his wife. Years earlier, Sheylla Cabrera had come to the United States from Peru, chasing the same dream held by millions of immigrants, to build a better future for her family. By 33, she had become what she had always wanted to be, a devoted mother to 3 boys, ages 9, 6, and 4, in Lancaster, California. Friends and neighbors remembered her as loyal, affectionate, and tireless, a woman who radiated warmth even while quietly carrying heavy, crushing burdens. She pushed herself day after day to support her 3 boys, always keeping a bright, steady energy that made people feel comfortable around her. In the small apartment she rented on Lancaster Boulevard, she managed to build a home where her children felt safe and loved. Yet behind that cheerful face, Sheylla carried a secret. It was a dark reality that only a few people close to her understood. Her husband, 6-year-old Josimar Cabrera Corno, was not the gentle partner he pretended to be in public. In private, the marriage was tense and frightening. Her mother, Helga Rossilo, who stayed in Peru, said Sheylla had reported Josimar for domestic violence before leaving their country. The abuse did not stop when they left Peru. It followed them across borders and oceans. Sheylla was not the only one who suffered. Her mother, Rochilo, said, "She told me that he hit her, insulted her, and even slapped my youngest grandchild, who was only 3 years old." For years, Sheylla endured both physical and emotional violence, trapped in a relationship that became more dangerous with every day that passed. Her friends watched, unable to help, as she faced an impossible choice: stay and keep enduring the abuse, or leave and risk losing her children to a man who constantly threatened to take them away. Her friend Elizabeth Russo described the cruel situation Sheylla was in, explaining that Sheylla was terrified because Josimar always threatened to disappear with the kids, and she believed that if she took any action, he would kidnap them. Those threats had held Sheylla in place for years, but by the summer of 2025, something in her finally shifted. The long pattern of abuse had eroded any belief that life with him could get better, and remaining in the marriage felt more dangerous than walking away. By early August, she had reached her limit. Friends later shared that she had acknowledged the relationship was abusive and had told Josimar she wanted a divorce. It was not a decision made impulsively. She understood clearly how risky it can be to leave an abusive partner, yet staying no longer felt like an option. On August 9, she called her parents in Peru and explained that she planned to leave him and take the children, speaking with a mix of resolve and fear. She understood that she had to protect herself and her sons. According to Sheylla's mother, during their final call, her daughter said she planned to file a complaint against Josimar with authorities in Lancaster. That would become the last time she ever heard her child's voice. Inside the Lancaster Boulevard apartment, the air felt thick with tension. Josimar sensed what was coming. His wife, whom he had kept in line with fear and violence, was preparing to leave. The controlled image he had worn for so long was falling apart, revealing something far more dangerous than anyone around them had realized, as one friend later recalled through tears at a vigil. This part is especially painful to talk about because so many people had tried to help her leave. Friends and neighbors had seen the danger signs. They reached out, they listened, they did what they could, but escaping domestic violence is rarely simple, especially when children are involved and the abuser's threats feel very real. Sheylla did not know that Josar never planned to let her go. In his mind, if he could no longer control her, then no one else would have her either. August 9 was the last day anyone saw her alive inside the Lancaster apartment, a detail that now haunts those who loved her. On August 10, the unthinkable occurred. The exact details of her death remain sealed in court records, but investigators described a scene of deliberate, calculated violence. Prosecutors said that on August 10, in the apartment where they lived with their 3 children, Josar killed Sheylla, using a knife as the weapon. This was not a sudden outburst of rage or a brief lapse in self-control. It was intentional. It was final. Inside that small apartment, 3 little boys were nearby, unaware that their mother was being killed by the man they trusted as their father. 3 innocent children whose childhoods would be broken forever, their mother taken from them in an act of unimaginable cruelty. After ending Shayla's life, Josimar focused on hiding what he had done. He carefully wrapped her body in a large piece of fabric, the same material later recognized in the surveillance footage. He worked with a slow, measured rhythm, guided more by cold purpose than panic. He had already chosen his next moves, with a plan for both disposal and escape. In hindsight, every action he took that day showed a disturbing level of preparation and intent. In the early hours of August 10, Josimar began the methodical process of covering up his crime. The apartment complex was still and silent, with most residents fast asleep. He likely believed no one would see what he was about to do, but someone did. A neighbor coming home from her night shift around 2:40 a.m. noticed something that would later become vital to the case. Noorbell Marara saw Josimar cleaning out the trunk of the family car in the middle of the night. She later told reporters that it felt unsettling, saying she knew no one was usually outside at that hour and that seeing someone scrubbing a trunk then was frightening. She had no idea she was watching a man get ready to dispose of his wife's body. What followed was caught on video, a single moment frozen in time that would help seal Josimar's fate. A neighbor's Ring doorbell camera recorded images that later became central to the murder investigation. In the blurry footage, marked around 4 a.m., on August 10, a figure can be seen wrestling with a large, wrapped bundle. The video shows a man dragging something that is clearly heavy, hauling it across the ground with visible strain. The bundle is tightly covered in fabric, hiding whatever is inside. What the camera recorded was Sheylla Cabrera pulling his wife's body out of their apartment. He lifted Shayla into the trunk of the family car and then drove toward the Angeles National Forest, a vast stretch of wilderness about an hour north of Lancaster. The forest, with its steep ravines and isolated slopes, reaches for miles over rough ground. It had become, tragically, a dumping ground for those trying to hide violent acts. Josimar steered along the dark roads that cut into the forest. After finding a spot he believed was hidden enough, he lifted Shayla's body from the trunk and pushed her over the side of a steep embankment, leaving her among rocks and brush as if her life meant nothing at all. He then drove back to the apartment, walked in to his 3 sons, and began weaving the lies he hoped would buy him time to disappear. 2 days after Shayla was killed, on August 12, worried friends contacted the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department to report her missing. When messages and calls went unanswered, they knew immediately that something was very wrong. This was not like her. She always responded, especially when it involved her children. Deputies went to the apartment complex in the 500 block of Lancaster Boulevard to take a missing person report. But when investigators started asking questions, Josimar's story began to fall apart. He gave different explanations about where she was, even claiming at one point that Immigration and Customs Enforcement had taken her. The story about immigration agents was a calculated lie, crafted to explain Shayla's sudden disappearance and make it seem as though federal authorities had taken her. It was the kind of claim that would be hard to check right away and might cause people to hesitate before asking more questions. Later, he changed his account and said she had left with another man. In yet another version, he claimed she had been in an accident but offered no details. Each explanation clashed with the one before it, alarming investigators and Shayla's family. Why would a worried husband give 3 different stories about where his wife had gone? The contradictions were impossible to ignore. Detectives quickly suspected foul play. Friends then told them about the years of abuse, Shayla's plans to leave, and Josimar's threats. Confirming this was far more than a routine missing person case. Investigators began reviewing surveillance video from the apartment complex, hoping to find any trace or clue of what had happened to Shayla. On August 13, during a follow-up by the Lancaster Station team, detectives uncovered evidence that changed everything. A nearby neighbor's Ring camera showed Josimar dragging a large, fabric-wrapped object away from the building. That chilling clip of him hauling the bundle turned the case overnight from a missing person report into a full homicide investigation. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau quickly took control of the case. Detectives reached out to the Crescenta Valley, Altadena, and Montrose Mountain search and rescue teams, who began combing wide sections of the Angeles National Forest. With more than 700,000 acres of steep, harsh terrain, the forest made the search for a single body feel almost impossible, but investigators knew they had to try. At the same time, they coordinated with the Mexican General Consulate and the Peruvian General Consulate to issue alerts for Josimar Cabrera. They had uncovered something even more alarming. Josimar and the couple's 3 young children were missing as well. Investigators believed he had already run, likely taking the boys with him, possibly back to Peru. On the morning of Saturday, August 16, a little after 10 a.m., investigators received a call from the Montrose Mountain search and rescue team. They had finally found something. The search and rescue team reported that they had located an object resembling the same material seen in the surveillance footage of Josar dragging a bundle from the apartment complex. It was lying over the edge of a steep embankment in the Angeles National Forest, in a remote, isolated area, roughly an hour's drive from Lancaster. Homicide detectives quickly hurried out to the location. When they examined the fabric up close, their worst fears were confirmed. Inside the wrapping was the body of Sheylla Cabrera, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. The proof could not be ignored. The footage clearly captured Josimar dragging a large bundle out of the apartment, and that bundle turned out to be his wife's body. Now, her remains had been discovered exactly where the evidence had quietly pointed. For those who cared about Sheylla, the confirmation was utterly shattering. Their friend, their neighbor, the smiling mother who had worked so hard for her boys, had been murdered by the man who said he loved her and then thrown away like garbage in a lonely forest. News of her death spread quickly in Lancaster, as officials also learned her 3 children were safe in Peru. The boys were at least safe, but their mother was gone, and their father was now a fugitive, wanted for murder. That evening, friends and relatives held a vigil for Sheylla outside Lancaster City Hall. Women and neighbors carried signs reading "Justice for Sheylla" and "Not one more." As candles burned in the California night, Josimar Cabrera was already thousands of miles away, having fled to Peru to evade arrest. Lieutenant Michael Madica later told the New York Times that Josimar was detained in both Mexico and Peru after entering each country by land. In each country, he was released because no criminal charges had yet been filed against him. Without a formal case open in the United States, authorities in Mexico and Peru had no legal basis to keep him in custody. Peruvian officials questioned him at the Lima airport and placed the children in protective care, but they could not detain Josimar himself. Peru's foreign ministry later announced that the children were repatriated to Los Angeles, traveling through Mexico City to be reunited with their maternal grandmother. While this was happening, prosecutors in Los Angeles County moved forward with the case. On Thursday, August 21, homicide detectives presented their evidence to the district attorney, and Josimar Cabrera Corno was charged with murder and the use of a knife as a deadly weapon. The following day, the district attorney's office obtained an arrest warrant to begin the formal extradition process. District Attorney Nathan Hookman released a statement calling the accusations horrific and vowing to do everything possible to bring Josimar back under their jurisdiction so he could be held responsible. Interpol then issued a red notice for his arrest, identifying him as a wanted fugitive worldwide. If found guilty on the current charges, he would face a potential maximum sentence of 26 years to life in prison. For several days, Josimar stayed at large in Peru, though he surely sensed that time was running out. On the 27th of August 2025, he surrendered at Interpol headquarters in Lima. Peru's national police announced his surrender with a video showing him in handcuffs, wearing a shirt marked with an Interpol emblem and surrounded by officers. Local authorities are now working to extradite him to California to face trial. The extradition process may take many months, but he will remain in Peruvian custody until he is finally returned to the United States.